Hello, and thank you for joining us for this World Council of Credit Unions virtual event, Step into the Future, the Bitcoin Dilemma. My name is Greg Newman, Director of Communications for World Council. As credit unions slowly head into the future, a digital future, it's essential to understand the changes and opportunities that digital technologies bring to our industry. That's why we're thrilled to be joined today by Ian Kahn. He is a global technology futurist who will be one of the keynote speakers at the 2022 World Credit Union Conference in Glasgow, Scotland this July. He is here to screen portions of his latest film, The Bitcoin Dilemma. In it, Ian brings together an exemplary list of industry experts to help us understand the cryptocurrency revolution currently underway as part of a series of digital events as we look into the future. If any questions come into your mind as you watch the film today, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. You can type them in there. Ian's also going to be chatting with you throughout today's event in the chat function, and we'll be asking Ian some questions as well throughout this event as time allows. So let's bring in Ian Kahn, digital technology futurist. And Ian, thanks for being here. We're thrilled to have you and thrilled to see this movie of yours.
It's my pleasure. Thank you to Woku for having me and being here to support the industry. I'm thrilled on having this session today and screening the film and maybe opening up our minds to some ideas about crypto, about NFTs and digital money. This is a topic that's been evolving. It's going on, and I think it's something that will continue to make the news. I see there's a tremendous turnout on this session. Here's what I want to do. So for all the folks who've just logged in, put in your city or your country from where you're logged in. Put it in. Let's see. I'm gonna call you out. I'm gonna call out who it is. So we've got folks from Madison, Wisconsin, Ghana, Philippines. We've got somebody from Middletown, Phoenix, Arizona, Portland, Trinidad. Oh my God, the turnout, guys. Denver, Ohio, St. Lucia, Malawi. We have an international audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this session is already a hit. Can I say that, Greg? Des Moines, South Carolina. We've got somebody from
this is the power. This is truly the power of the Global Credit Union Network.
Oh my God,
at play right here,
Ian. Thank you. I have Freeport, Bahamas. The list goes on. Folks, I could not be more grateful than I am right now. Thank you for turning out, taking time today morning for this screening. What I'm going to do is, as the film screens, as the film plays, I'm going to be on the Q&A. I'm going to answer your questions. So whatever questions, thoughts, doubts, whatever it is that you have around crypto, NFT, tokenization, blockchain, put it in there and I will answer those questions. Let's have a discussion on the side, and then I'll do an official Q&A as we take a break halfway through. But thank you so much, everybody. We have somebody from Brazil, Bermuda. I am floored. Greg, let's get the show going.
All right, we're going to screen the first clip. It's about 20 minutes or so. Ian, thanks so much for the introduction. And again, feel free to chat with Ian as you watch. And if you have questions that you want him to answer later out loud, use that Q&A function. Here we go.
All right. Thank you. The story of Bitcoin began more than a decade ago when Satoshi Nakamoto released Bitcoin in response to the 2008 financial crisis. With more than a decade passed since then, in all these years, Bitcoin has given rise to a huge ecosystem of what we now know as cryptocurrencies that can be used as a medium of exchange and storage and potentially replace or augment fiat currency. Now, different industries are looking at implementing blockchain and potentially using cryptocurrencies to do many things. This includes paying vendors, receiving payments, creating efficiency within their industry. My name is Ian Kahn. My love of Bitcoin started almost 5 years ago when I directed my first documentary, Blockchain City. In Blockchain City, I spoke about the emergence of blockchain as a viable technology to change how cities function. In my work as a futurist, I encounter a lot of different technologies and emerging ideas that can rapidly change the world we live in. In the Bitcoin dilemma, I'm bringing to you different perspectives from the cryptocurrency industry, investment community, well-known experts, inventors, and influencers to help understand the role of cryptocurrency in our world today and its potential impact on all of us in the future. You'll also learn a lot about the future of finance, asset management, and a simple way of understanding decentralized finance and non-fungible tokens. This documentary is meant for everybody and is not a technical documentary where you need to have a huge background or knowledge about finance or cryptocurrencies or blockchain or technology. In fact, the less you know, the better it is. This documentary is suitable for school kids, university students, professionals, homemakers, business owners, employees, leaders in every industry you can think about. We've approached this documentary with the simple fact that everybody will be impacted by cryptocurrency at some stage in the next few years. The more we understand this era of cryptocurrencies, the better decisions we will make about our lives. This in turn will benefit all of us collectively. I will introduce you to all the guests in the documentary as we encounter them, and with that, let's begin with my friend Kim Komando, a Hall of Fame broadcaster, radio host whose show is America's largest radio show about technology and more. I asked Kim to help us understand what Bitcoin is.
Let's say that you want to send your friend John $10. You could give him cash. You could write John a check. You could send him the $10 using Venmo or Zelle, or you could use cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency is the broad term that describes when two parties exchange currency over the internet. So you would send John the equivalent of $10 in United States dollars, but in virtual currency that goes by these crazy names like Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Ethereum. And when you do the transaction, there's going to be some small fees associated with it because, after all, nothing's free, not even when it comes to cryptocurrency.
Well, there we heard it from Kim. To understand cryptocurrencies, it's really important to have different perspectives, and I couldn't think of anybody better than Lemon Beard, inventor and creator of a cryptocurrency called Hashgraph. Lemon is a globally recognized authority, mathematician, and scientist who's working on the future of cryptocurrencies through his invention of Hashgraph. Let's hear about what distributed ledger technology is all about.
Bitcoin was the first distributed ledger technology, the first DLT, the first ledger. It gave us the ability to have a kind of money that isn't run by a central bank. There is no single person controlling it. It's distributed across a large number of people running computers. And as long as most of them are honest, in the case of Bitcoin, as long as you can estimate exactly how much computing power, then you can trust it. And so the whole idea of these ledgers are that we take things that were done by a central party and we distribute them out over a group so that you can trust it. No one person can hurt it. So, money right now is paper money, but most of the money in the world is not paper bills. Most of the money in the world is just ones and zeros in a computer. But it's the ones and zeros in a single computer. Your bank account is held by a single computer, and the bank could cheat and change the numbers. But with a ledger, it's ones and zeros, but it's distributed across many computers in a way that no one computer can cheat. Even a small group of them cannot cheat. And so you can trust it.
So ask anybody who knows anything about cryptocurrencies or blockchain or DLTs. Trust is a fundamental pillar of what this entire technology stack is bringing to different industries, and in fact to the entire world. Blockchain technology that forms the foundation of crypto is all about trust, eliminating mistrust and challenges that we face with the current financial system. I spoke with Bobby Lee, a board member at the Bitcoin Foundation. He's also author of Promise of Bitcoin, the Future of Money, and how it can work for you. Bobby is one of the earliest pioneers in the cryptocurrency space and has seen the rise of Bitcoin from its very, very early days.
Prior to Bitcoin, we never really had a tangible digital asset of value. Everything digital was belonging to some centralized entity or corporation, whether it's movies, music, artwork, photographs, and stuff like that. We never had a truly native asset class that was worth money. So even though today we call Bitcoin a digital currency, I'd much rather describe it in more technical terms as a decentralized digital asset. What's an asset? An asset is a vessel, a container for value. And the idea that people hold assets is for two reasons. Number one is they want to preserve the value. This is what they call store of value or store hold of value. And the other reason to hold an asset is hopefully maybe it might even appreciate in value relative to other assets.
As we get deeper into learning about Bitcoin and everything that goes on with it, I wanted to bring in more of an entrepreneur's perspective. I spoke with Ben Way. Ben started his first company at the age of 15 and went on to raise 25 million pounds in his teens, making him one of the world's first .com millionaires. Today, Ben is an entrepreneur, author, and investor.
Cryptocurrency revolution has been an incredible journey. I mean, the only analogy I have or experience I have, anything like it in my life, was the internet revolution. I was there right at the beginning when people were telling me the internet was a fad and domain names would not exist in a few years. And my father laughed. I said to him, Dad, one day people will buy things on the internet. And he was like, son, you're definitely bucking up the wrong tree. It is actually an interesting, predictable path these revolutions take. They have a kind of beginning where everyone's just in the industry talking about it. And then it starts to build into some kind of snowball effect. And then it transitions into something dangerous, which is the hype cycle. And the hype cycle is very dangerous because it's generally where you have big crashes. And because it's become general knowledge, that's also when mums and pops lose their money and people get really hurt. So having seen these cycles, the crypto cycle is very similar.
I wanted to also bring in a critical element to understanding the whole cryptocurrency world. And I spoke with my good friend, Daniel Roberts, who's the editor-in-chief of a publication called Decrypt. He has spoken and covered cryptocurrencies since 2011 and is a highly recognized journalist and writer covering the crypto space. Let's talk to Dan about the realistic foresight on cryptocurrencies.
At the very least, I think it has proven itself over the course of 10, 11, 12 years to the point where it's not going away. It's not going to collapse and disappear tomorrow. There are tens of thousands of other cryptocurrencies, altcoins, what have you. Some of them have real projects and purposes behind them, some don't, many will disappear. But at the very least, I think Bitcoin and then also Ethereum, which is a separate blockchain network, are here to stay. And in the last year and a half or so, there was kind of a perfect storm of narratives that converged. The COVID-19 pandemic really reiterated for a lot of people the appeal of Bitcoin as an investment, as digital gold. When governments are handing out stimulus checks and when the Fed is pulling various levers, that's a reminder that Bitcoin has a capped supply. There will only ever be 21 million coins. Even if you have no interest in it, fine. Even if you think it's stupid, fine. But I think that what the consensus has shown is that it's here to stay. It exists, it's going to continue to exist. And in addition, amid the last year and a half or so, you had not just traditional Wall Street investors, but some publicly traded companies also buying in and showing that they believe it's here to stay. PayPal, Square, Tesla. Of course, the Tesla one has been very controversial to Elon Musk, but sort of all at once, multiple parties embraced Bitcoin like never before. And the difference from 2017, which was the last mania, is that that was really retail driven. That was just the regular folks. Now it's kind of multiple parties at once jumping in.
Now, you may think of everything that's happening with crypto being really different from what we know about the financial world. And how's the supply and demand really impacting how we work with cryptocurrencies? Do you think this is stupid? Let's hear from a crypto analyst. Scott Melker is a cryptocurrency analyst and well-known crypto advocate. Here's what he has to say.
There was a grand awakening since COVID hit that the policies of central banks and governments were failing the people. When you saw stocks continuing to rise and endless money printing and quantitative easing, I believe people started to look for a solution to store their value, and Bitcoin solves that. You know, in the cryptocurrency space, we're building an absolutely new global financial system that will allow people who are unbanked and underbanked access like they never had before.
Multiple times author Michael Casey is going to help us understand a lot more about the rise of cryptocurrencies. Michael works as an educator and advisor at the MIT Media Lab and the MIT Sloan School of Business Management. He is the acclaimed author of 5 books on finance, social media, and cultural history. His latest book, The Truth Machine, The Blockchain and the Future of Everything, is a must-read for anyone who wants to know more about the future of blockchain.
It's an integral part of the way that we see the world now, the crypto sort of blockchain mindset, if you like. And therefore, I'm going to say it. I'm going to call it out, put a flag in the ground and say that this is the age of cryptocurrency.
I also wanted us to talk to someone from a really strong financial background, someone who does this day in and day out. I could think of nobody else but Mark Yusko, who heads Morgan Creek Capital Management and is an authority on anything related to investments. Here are Mark's initial comments.
If we go back in time, throughout most of history, assets were bearer assets, right? If you go back to the history of money, in the olden days, you had cows, I had chickens, and we would bring our cows and chickens to market and we would trade. And then that got to be too cumbersome. So you printed little coins with cows on them and I printed little coins with chickens on them, and we would exchange those coins. Well, then carrying those Saxo coins got to be really heavy. So we deposited those coins at a bank and they gave us pieces of paper, currency that we could exchange. And that's how commerce and money was created. Now, there was a time when money actually had backing, right? Like you could exchange a physical note for gold or silver. In fact, a pound note 380 years ago would get you a pound of sterling silver. The problem is, because we went away from the gold standard and the silver standard, today it would take you 174 pounds of sterling silver to get a pound note. So we've devalued currencies around the world in the fiat world. So fiat means the government can issue currency at will, at fiat, and we've untethered from backing. So quickly, currencies have never had anything behind them, right? Money is simply custom and belief. In the old days, you had your coins with cows and I had my coins with chickens. And the only reason those had value is because you and I were willing to exchange them. Or you can go back to the Roman Empire. They had the denarius because people customarily accepted it in exchange for something of value. Why are my dollars in the United States green pieces of paper? In China, they're red pieces of paper. And in Israel, they're yellow pieces of paper. They're just pieces of paper, but they aren't backed by anything, right? If I turn my green paper money into the US government, I get zip, zero, nada. I don't get gold. I don't get silver. I don't get a share of tax revenues. And in fact, it's worse than that. Currency actually is backed by debt. The only real money in the world is gold, which has no associated liability, which is why for 5,000 years, 1 ounce has bought a fine person's suit, from a suit of armor to a zoot suit in the 20s to a fine man's suit on Savile Row today. And why Bitcoin as digital gold, all the properties of gold, but digital form, has no liability associated with it. But all currencies, US dollars, renminbi, euros, all have government debt associated with them. And that's why they are devaluing. In the last 12 months, the US government printed 40% of all, well, actually didn't print, they hit a button and now we have ones and zeros because we actually don't have paper money anymore. It's all electronic. But 40% of the outstanding money supply in the history of the Republic, which goes all the way back to 1776, in 12 months, which means the value of that currency is going down in terms of purchasing power. And that's unfortunately the nature of currency. So what a real money, right, gold or Bitcoin, the reason its price is rising is not necessarily that that asset is getting better, is that the cross, the dollar, is getting worse.
Now, I'm sure you'll agree this is getting so exciting because we're looking at the history of money, where money actually started, and the impact that it's been having on us. Let's hear more about what fiat means and get deep into the simplest explanation of money that I have ever encountered.
Yeah, there are two types of exchanges, fiat to crypto and crypto to crypto. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, I thought a fiat was a car. Well, not in crypto land. Like most industries, crypto has its own lexicon. Fiat money is government issued currency. So if you're in the United States, that means the US dollar. And you have many exchanges to use. One of the easiest for beginners to use is something called Coinbase. You pick an exchange and you open an account. The rest of the process is really, really simple. You verify your identity, you deposit US dollars into the exchange, and then you can start sending and spending your crypto. Most cryptocurrencies are created by something that's called mining. Computers mine coins by solving these complex math problems. The more powerful the computer, the faster it can think. Now, if your computer is the fastest one to solve the problem, well, bingo, you're great. You just won 1 unit of whatever cryptocurrency that you're mining. And in some cases, that could be $500 or maybe even, I don't know, $50,000. Way back when, around 2009, you could fire up your home computer and start mining. But today, mining is run on specialized chips known as an ASIC, or an application-specific integrated circuits. Yeah, anytime you talk about technology, there's always this acronym. Anyway, they have up to 100 billion times the capacity of PCs. These systems cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and mining is now big business. It's just a ton of competition. If you're thinking about getting into mining, only spend money that you are prepared to lose on the gear. I mean, you could buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of hard drives, graphic cards, and processors and not get one coin. But in the meantime, your electric bill soars and those computer parts will wear out in no time at all. Now remember, these computers are working at full speed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
We have currencies, we have commodities, and I think now we have digital currencies and digital commodities. Eventually, we'll also have digital stocks and digital bonds. And those are the 4 asset classes: stocks, bonds, currencies, and commodities. And if we think of Bitcoin as potentially digital gold, and we think of other cryptocurrencies potentially as other forms of currency that are more easily used for transactions, take a Dash, for example.
So Bitcoin, I actually liken it to a league of its own. There's been many other cryptocurrencies that have come up, the likes of Ethereum, Litecoin, Dogecoin is very hot, very popular. However, these other asset classes are just copycat. Bitcoin is fundamental digital money, whereas these other asset classes represent something different, even though you have a lot of people pumping all these other alternate coins or shit coins, if you will. What comes with Bitcoin is also the speculation. I see it. A lot of platforms, a lot of exchanges cater to these so-called investors. Some of them are almost like degenerate gamblers, right? People liken them to unregulated, unlicensed online casinos. So that's the sort of ugly side of the Bitcoin speculation trading. But legitimately, I advocate for people to invest, to hold Bitcoin as a long-term asset that will appreciate many, many times in value, because I think the world has yet to wrap its head around it.
Really, really fascinating stuff. I mean, the one thing that jumps out at me in all this is I had recently in the last year or so starting to just delve into investing in just a small amount of crypto. And I have a sister who is very well invested and just to this day sends me articles saying why it's a scam, why you're going to lose all your money. That makes a strong argument that that's not the case, right?
Yeah, you know what? There's so much happening at a really rapid speed and this is my honest opinion. I feel many people, many of us, we just don't know what's happening. We have ignored what is happening with crypto, but it's time to look into it, and not from an investment perspective. We have to know what it is, how it impacts business, how it impacts credit union, because it's going to help you do a much better job at your role if you work in a credit union, or to do anything related to your career, your clients, your customers. We have to invest in understanding crypto more right now.
There aren't a lot of credit unions dealing with crypto right now that we know of. Are there many traditional consumer financial institutions that are?
There is definitely great interest. If you look at the top banks, I mean, I would be surprised if they're not doing anything. I know for a fact, Canadian top 5 banks, everybody's doing something with crypto, with blockchain. They're trying to figure out how to do it. There's definitely that research aspect of it happening. Do they have a product that's out there and it involves crypto? Not yet, because of the volatility. Cryptos aren't really accepted in the mainstream a lot, but I see that changing in the next couple of years. I know President Biden is supposed to sign something soon on crypto regulations. So there's a lot of interest from the industries in general on what would that be? What is he going to sign? The SEC in the United States has definitely talked about crypto before, and they are in the process of kind of figuring out how to regulate it if they can to some extent. There's way too much noise. We have to pay attention to that noise.
We always like to say that what starts at the international standard setting level eventually will get to your country. And we've been seeing it for a few years now, that crypto guidance from the Basel Committee for banking supervision, from the Financial Stability Board. A lot of these international standard setters are already putting out guidance where crypto is concerned. So obviously, I think you're right that it's just a matter of time before it gets to every country, some of these regulations, and whether they're good or bad for credit unions, we'll see. Mm-hmm. One of the questions I have, and I've brought this up before to people in the industry, crypto is not environmentally friendly. We know that it takes a lot of energy to mine Bitcoin. So if financial institutions are going to go there, and I think ultimately they're going to have to probably, but how can they balance that with the push to introduce green initiatives? Because that's another huge, you've got these two forces, and there really is not a lot of middle ground there. If you're going to mine Bitcoin, you're going to take a lot of energy. How do you rationalize that with people who say, we want more green products, we want more green services?
So Greg, that's a great question. Some of the answers to that question are actually in part 2 of the film. I think we will cover that. Mark talks about that. Mark Yusko talks about it. But here's the reality of it. Bitcoin, when it started 12 plus years ago, was really bad for the environment, a lot of heat, a lot of negative environment impact. But over these 12 years, Bitcoin as an example, just one cryptocurrency, has dramatically changed the way it works and the way it's mined. And operations today are, run on renewables, as an example. And so the story has changed significantly from where it started and where it is right now. I really feel the crypto industry in general is energy efficient. It just has really bad PR to it because of its beginnings. But if we pay attention, there's definitely renewables that can fuel this entire crypto revolution.
All right, well, let's get to the second part of this film. I think a lot of people are interested in hearing more about what you just talked about in relation to green finance, or making this a little bit greener. I want to mention again that Ian is going to be one of our keynote speakers at the World Credit Union Conference in Glasgow, July 17th to the 20th, Glasgow, Scotland. And you can go to wcuc.org to register. We'll have more information on that later as well. But let's take a look at the second part of the film.
In this documentary, we've seen a lot of different things about cryptocurrencies. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is crypto as a solution to challenges the world is facing right now. On a daily basis, we see economic instability, war, inequality, and many social, political, and economic events that are shaping the lives of people and communities across the world. The question is, what role can cryptocurrency play in a world full of turmoil and instability? Is crypto able to bring peace and prosperity to nations that are torn by war? Or is crypto a way for the dark industries to keep on functioning?
I believe that we're very near where we have a full global financial system based in cryptocurrency, not that replaces the current system, but that runs parallel, that will allow people who are underbanked or unbanked, which is most of the world, people don't realize, to have access to the same kind of systems that people in first world countries and who have acquired wealth will have access to.
These smaller economies tend to get buffeted by the effects of what's happening in the United States. It's an inherent misalignment between the interests of those smaller countries and those of the United States, where the US is pursuing its own monetary policy for its own mandate to do so, and that's perfectly legitimate. But because the dollar is the currency that basically sits on the assets of all of these different banks that use it as the means to then lend against, whether it's in the small economy or in Europe or anywhere, what happens to the dollar and what happens to interest rates in the United States profoundly affects those places. And this has been a problem now for 20 years because the quantitative easing that came out of the financial crisis had huge buffeting impacts on emerging markets. It saw hot money inflows and outflows, and this is a constant theme, right? That as the backdrop gives us, I think, the motivation for a lot of these smaller countries to start exploring some of these options, especially right now when there is legitimate concern that US monetary policy is going to have yet again that sort of impact on the world. We've already seen, obviously, a massive amount of expansion in dollar issuance. But as we move into a period where people are starting to get worried about US inflation, where there is a massive debt overhang, both at the governmental and at the corporate level, the prospect that the US will just go even deeper down this path of essentially inflating its way out of its problems creates real problems for these small countries who are caught up in the big waves that are set by that. So the idea that you would then seek out some other alternative is actually, I think, certainly a legitimate option to explore. Let's put it that way. You're seeing these smaller countries saying, you know what, maybe I can opt out. Here are these options. I'm not using a crystal ball here. I don't know how many are going to go. There'll be a lot of pressure brought to bear on them not to do so by those who have an interest in them not doing so. But I think that there's certainly a trend that is worth watching here.
And there's interesting issues too about traceability, accountability. Is this going to facilitate bad behaviors, in the extreme terroristic activities, because payments can be easily made? And it's not clear to me which way that cuts, because on the one hand, it's always struck me that cash is inherently not very traceable. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are kind of interesting in a way, because on the one hand, they're viewed as anonymous, but on the other hand, there's a whole record-keeping trail.
So we are now 50 years into the chaos of money. What I mean by that is, in 1971, President Nixon actually took the US dollar off of the gold standard. And this is something that happened, people know about it, but people don't realize the impact. By taking the US dollar off the gold standard, we're now unhinged. The printing press is just going full speed. It's happening in the US, it's happening in China, it's happening in Europe, it's happening in many, many countries. The central governments are almost in a unspoken race of seeing who can print their money faster. Because with more money printed, the more the currency is devalued, the more the economic growth. This is convoluted, right? Think about that. The more you have your currency debased and devalued relative to the other countries, the more competitive your exports are, and the more the growth, and you have better GDP numbers, you have better stock earnings, and that's where we're entering.
All governments in the history of mankind have had inflationary fiat currencies because it's the nature of governments to overspend, right? That's what governments do. That's what empires do. And the only way out when you get overly indebted, right? Once you have all the debt, you got four choices. You can pay it back, you can restructure it, you can default on it, or you can inflate it away. There's not enough taxation power once you get to a certain level to pay it back, so you can't do that. You can't restructure it, because to restructure, you'd have to have somebody accept the deal. No one's going to accept a deal on a bad asset. You can default, but then you get kicked out of office, and politicians don't like that. So the only choice is to inflate it away. And in the history of mankind, there have been 775 paper currencies. 3/4 of them disappeared off the face of the planet because they were inflated to zero. Now, we've done a pretty good job with the dollar. From 1776 to 1913, a dollar was worth a dollar. Had a couple wiggles around two wars, but it's basically worth a dollar. There was no myth of inflation. Inflation is just theft. Inflation is theft by the government on the masses and the middle class to make the rich richer. That's all it is.
We are almost headed towards the end of our journey together today. We're now on the brink, and a really large revolution that's not just financial, but also social and economic. We're also headed towards an era where money as we know it is changing its nature and becoming decentralized. We're looking at technology becoming a dominant player and the role of big tech and innovative companies that can create new offerings and solutions become prominent. Is it time for a new revolution?
Ultimately, we are at this moment where, climate change is the biggest threat facing the world. And contrary to the kind of rather shrill critique of Bitcoin, that it is sort of destined to fry the planet. And also contrary, by the way, to the rather naive perspective of lots of Bitcoiners who think if we just let it all go away, it will naturally become green. There's a middle path here that I think is a strategy option for these smaller countries to actually use Bitcoin as a funding mechanism for the development of green infrastructure. And that is a really powerful concept, not only from the perspective of how do you get renewable energy systems laid out, but actually how you empower local communities. Because if you've got not only a local source of energy through, say, a solar microgrid built into a community, but also a local source of funding through the Bitcoin mines that would be attached to those, you get this really interesting new way of thinking about sovereignty. Sovereignty as access to energy and money. We can create mechanisms with these powerful new means of essentially creating value that are attached to energy sources. And that becomes a form of sovereignty, a form of empowerment.
So I was sitting at lunch today and there was this big giant armored car, big diesel engine, black smoke, sitting out in front of the grocery store. And it was out there for 10 minutes while they collected the money. I think the legion of those trucks around the world collecting physical coins is probably worse for the environment than Bitcoin. I can't prove that yet, but I probably will. But here's the thing. Is it more efficient to do a money market with code than with lots of bodies at a banking network system around the world? Of course it is.
In the first generation, Bitcoin said, hey, we could make money be something that you can trust because it's distributed. And then after a while, people realized, well, the record of the money could actually be a record that stores other information. You could have things like NFTs being stored, which is just a way in the computer of representing value in the real world. So you can have tokens that represent houses and dollars and gold and anything else you can imagine. You can turn it into NFTs to represent it. Even weird things like your time or your future income, you can turn into NFTs and sell them today. It's just amazing. Stocks and companies can be turned into NFTs. And so the second generation was realizing if we're going to have this ledger remembering money, well, it could also remember everything else of value. That was kind of the second generation. And then the third generation was, well, no, wait a second. If we have money and we have things of value, if you can have some money on the ledger and I can have a house on the ledger, then why can't we do a transaction where we swap them? And you get my house and I get your money. And maybe there's rules built in that's enforced by the ledger itself. And this is what smart contracts are. Smart contracts are just any kind of computer program that's running that lets you do arbitrary rules, and the rules are enforced by the ledger. You don't have to trust any one person to enforce the rules. As long as a supermajority of the network is honest, then the rules are enforced. And so you had smart contracts. And then once you had the ability to do transactions like that, the next generation was, why don't we build markets? And now we're starting to see that distributed exchanges and things that are markets that are just automated. And a stock market or something like that can be incredibly fast and efficient. We have people building markets for, say, carbon credits, and that allows you to lower the bar, make it much cheaper and easier to trade carbon credits, which lowers the price, makes it more efficient. For that, you need fairness. You need to make sure that the ledger puts the transactions in a fair order. And we have that as well. And so these are kind of the generations. You start with money, and then you add value, and then you add the ability to swap these and to enforce complicated rules. And then you have markets. So it's not just two people interacting, it's groups of people interacting. And it's just following the way the real world worked outside of ledgers. The reason it's mirroring the real world is because pretty much all of the real world will have tendrils reaching into the ledger world or vice versa. Ledgers are going to become part of every part of the economy.
Companies shouldn't be looking at crypto like an investment. Crypto overall, even though a lot of people are speculating in Bitcoin and Ethereum, crypto and the blockchain are tools. They're tools that business can utilize to allow their customers to make transactions in an easier and more flexible way. Everything in the world on a fundamental level is built upon something else. That's how we innovate. There's no truly unique idea. So all these things are just stepping stones to an entirely digital life. You may end up spending more time in your digital life than you do in the real world, which is a sad thing for humanity, but it is where we're going.
We have government, we have society, we have orderly, business, right? So regulation is a must, meaning that if you have a country, if you have a system of government, then regulation is just a natural part of that. The reason regulation for Bitcoin has been so hard is because every country so far has tried to have a certain agency to regulate Bitcoin, where the existing regulatory agencies all deal with traditional assets, traditional world, whether it's housing, whether it's stocks, whether it's futures, whether it's commodities like gold, precious metals. So you have these different regulatory agencies that try to figure out what to do with Bitcoin, but the reality is none of them are capable because Bitcoin is a different beast. I call for, what I call a crypto czar. The idea is for a country, any country can do this, and every country should do this, which is appoint a new department to regulate cryptocurrency, crypto digital assets. That person, that team, that department should then set all the rules for cryptocurrency and digital assets. And I think that's the way forward, because cryptocurrency, it feels like a foreign exchange. Foreign currency, it feels like a stock, but it's not a stock. It's not an equity. What is it? Is it commodity? Is it property like real estate, or what is it? Different agencies treat it differently. So I think it's time for there to be a crypto czar to really look at it wholeheartedly.
I hope you've been able to gather the role of crypto on our finances, economies, and the world in general. Here are some final recommendations and thoughts to consider from everything that we've heard so far. You may take this as guidance or recommendations, but please do not take this as financial or legal advice or a prediction on where the industry is headed. Please do your due diligence when investing in new technology, investing in cryptocurrency, and use all your resources, advisors, to make the best decisions for you personally and your business and organizations.
I would tell everyone, do your homework and your research. There's so much out there. Before jumping in and going down the crypto rabbit hole and putting a lot of money in, do extensive reading and homework and self-educate.
They should be cautious. They should be open-minded, but I wouldn't put all one's assets in it, and probably for many people, I would probably recommend that they put little or maybe none of their assets in it.
Zero exposure to digital assets is the wrong number. You have to have exposure. You don't have to have all your assets, but you have to have more than zero. You should have a little bit, 1 to 3%, 3 to 5%. The younger you are, the higher the number, in Bitcoin as digital gold store of value. Should you own some Ethereum, the www dot of the internet of value? Absolutely. Should you own applications on top of that? Absolutely. Aave, Compound, absolutely should own those. Should you think about what's going to be in the middle of the stack? Things like Polkadot, things like Solana, things like Cosmos. Absolutely, right? In the old days, there were 80 internet protocols. Today we have 5: TCP/IP, SMTP, HTTP, FTP, and www. In the future, we'll probably have 5 core protocols for the Web 3.0, the internet of value, the trust net, as I like to call it. Bitcoin as the base layer, like TCP/IP, maybe Cosmos or Polkadot. On top of that, maybe Filecoin for FTP, and then Ethereum is the www. You got to own those. And then applications, the Facebooks and the Amazons of the digital age, you want to own those too. Definitely look at technology, definitely look at management, but get off zero.
Don't try to call the bottom. Don't try to sell the top. Just buy slowly, regardless of the price, and wait a very long time. That's how people have acquired generation wealth since the beginning of markets. And I don't think it will be any different in this. The trend is clearly up, and I think it will continue to rise.
There are kind of social motivations for why consumers are opting for these types of solutions that are based on this decentralized technology, right? Consumers want to work digitally. They want a lot of convenience, and you have to find a way to provide that convenient interaction with your consumers in a very low friction way. So yes, you need to put security measures in place, but you need to do that in a way where it's transparent to the consumer. So it's a tricky place for businesses, but I think for the forward-looking businesses, they're able to meet that demand for these decentralized digital solutions, but also create highly secure trust environment in which people can do business. Those businesses are going to win, and the businesses that can't provide that, they're going to lose. The ball's in our court, if you will, Ian, that we as technology providers and service providers, we've got to step up and make this happen. And I think governments have a huge challenge in front of them as well, because the governments are service providers, right? And I think the way that the public looks at the services they get from the governments is changing rapidly.
Okay, just think about this. When the IRS gets involved, you know that it's real. The IRS will require all cryptocurrency transfers of $10,000 or more be reported for tax purposes. The United States Federal Reserve Bank is developing its very own digital dollar. Unlike all other cryptocurrencies, America's digital dollar will be backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Now, the downside, any transaction you make is instantly known to the government. But if you think about it, very few legal transactions are done with cash. So the government already knows when you buy something. So the big question is, when will this all take place?
We're in the very early days where there's lots of fads and lots of scams and lots of volatility. And be aware that, if you buy a cryptocurrency, it's going to go up and down in price a lot right now. There are people starting to use it for really real world important applications. Read about those. If you have a company, look into it. Maybe there's a way that your company right now could be using tokens and crypto and all the rest in order to solve real business problems. And in previous years, it was only the cutting edge people doing it. But now pretty much every company is realizing we can be more efficient doing this stuff. So for consumers, get some apps, a wallet, play some of the games that use this stuff. And for businesses, look at how now it really can save you money and truly can make you more efficient and faster and better.
With that, friends, I must say goodbye. I hope you've really enjoyed this installment of our Emerging Technology documentary series. Some of my other works include Blockchain City, GX Now, The Future of Work, Bitcoin Dilemma, AI, The Next Frontier, and other titles. Please make sure to visit my website, iankhan.com or futuristy.com to learn more about our work and the opportunities for us to work together. Sign up for updates and exclusive content at iankhan.com/exclusive. Thanks again for your time in being with me on this journey to understanding cryptocurrencies and the future. Goodbye for now.
Ian, when I look at that, when I see the end of that second part of that video, and I see the comments coming in from some of our credit union folks who are on here, and the fact that there are so many on here from all over the world, it tells me that there's an interest in learning more. And everything, all the comments I'm seeing are want to know more, so I can see how maybe this can apply to our credit union. And that, I think, is where most people are. But what I feel you get out of this video and some of what you're saying is you can't ignore this. In other words, it's going to impact you, maybe not next year, but at some point it's going to impact you and your business. Is that really what this is meant to show people?
So depending on, Greg, depending on who's watching and what their role is within the specific credit union that they work for, it could be different. Like, you could be doing different things with the knowledge out there. Some of you are technical and you want to know, how does cryptocurrency work at a technical level, right? What is the code behind it? Some of you are more business oriented and you want to know, how does cryptocurrency work at a technical level, right? What is the code behind it? Some of you are more where some of you might want to know what does it do on a daily transactional basis, or some of you might want to know what does it do as an overall 10,000 foot. So all of us have different needs from the learning that we can potentially do. So let's establish what our interest is in the first place, number one. Number two is look for resources that can help you get there. I had some really great questions, and folks were asking me what are the resources that we can refer to that we can trust when it comes to learning about crypto. I can totally say LinkedIn Learning is a great resource. I'm a LinkedIn Learning instructor myself, and I'm building a course right now on the metaverse, on what the metaverse means. So LinkedIn, I totally vouch for them and their content. edX, Coursera, these are all reputable providers of knowledge, much of which is free. So yeah, join a course and learn about the ins and outs of what you need to know. I also posted some links of books by Michael Casey and some of the other people who are in the documentary, and go follow them, read their content. One of the things we need to do is have consistency in learning, right? I don't want you to go out, learn today, and then forget about it next week. Make learning about cryptocurrencies, emerging technologies, disruptive technologies, all of this, make it a habit on a daily basis, and just do a little bit of reading on a daily basis, and you will progress beyond what you think you will. And I think that's step number one. And then it could be anything else coming our way. It could be quantum computing, it could be big data, or what have you. We will know how to do it and how to learn about it.
Yeah, the one thing I take away from this is when I was a younger person, I was a reporter for over 20 years, and I worked in television, not in newspaper, but I remember a lot of arrogance from the newsprint industry about the web and all the talk, well, the web's going to replace newspaper, and newspaper didn't really prepare well, and as a result, newspapers around the world are a shell of what they were 20 years ago. And is that a lesson for people? I mean, I'm not to suggest that crypto is going to overtake all paper currency, but that if you don't prepare for it, your industry is going to suffer when others are preparing for it.
See, Greg, the world we live in is competitive. The competition, whether, let's talk at a business level, right? Every credit union should, in a healthy way, compete for market share, right? You should compete to get business from other parts of the industry. Like, that is what we should be doing as a credit union, is to serve more people, serve more clients, and to solve their financial cash flow, investment needs, and so on. If you think with that perspective, then you must know how to get competitive, how to be competitive. And technology, whether it's cryptocurrencies, maybe it could be the means to do that in the next few years, maybe, right? But we don't know. You would have to make up that decision based on your clients, your communities that you serve, and the work that you do. I think the way we do it is we have to go and explore, we have to learn. There are some countries that are adopting crypto. We've heard about El Salvador. There's a war going out in the world, and many people are talking about the price of crypto. And Greg, you were talking about this earlier as well.
I want to ask you about that, because I read an article yesterday suggesting that it's going to cause, the war in Ukraine is going to cause a surge in crypto buying. And you said you're not so sure that's the case.
So there are people on both sides of crypto. There are people who want the prices to go up. There are people who don't know what to do about it. And there are some that do not want them to go up. So there's different people out there. I think media and information and current events play a big part on that. Elon Musk's tweets have a big role to play in where cryptocurrency prices go. And one of the people who was in the documentaries, we didn't show him, but he talks about Elon Musk. So watch the full documentary on either YouTube or go to the website Bitcoin Dilemma, and you'll see some additional comments in there. I really believe the war has an impact on crypto, but just from a perspective of hyping it or dehyping it. I don't think it should go up or down based on the war, but just be careful out there and don't jump into any hype that says, hey, buy crypto right now because the price is going to go really high. Do not do that. That's not the right thing to do. And I honestly don't believe the prices are going to go up.
Well, Ian, this is fascinating. We can't wait to, first of all, meet you at the World Credit Union Conference in July in Glasgow and also hear more about this. You're going to be one of our keynote speakers. Could we expect something similar in terms of the presentation in Glasgow?
So in Glasgow, I'm going to talk a lot more about future readiness, our future readiness score. I will cover cryptocurrencies. I will cover the future of work. And so it's going to be a little bit broader. Today's session was very, very focused on just crypto, but we'll have a broader conversation that really gets you ready for the future. And whether it's crypto or anything else, I am going to give you the formula to become a future ready credit union. And that is what is needed right this second. So come to Glasgow, get your registrations done, and get going with booking your things.
Well, I know we're even more excited now than we were an hour ago. So thanks, Ian, so much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Today's webinar was recorded. It's going to be available later today on the World Council YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/Woku. And just a reminder, again, Ian will be one of the keynote speakers at the 2022 World Credit Union Conference in Glasgow from July 17th to the 20th. We'd love to see you there. You can register by visiting wcuc.org. And if you're not sure about registering still and you want to hear more, you can listen to the latest episode of the Global Credit Union podcast to hear a preview of what we are planning for Glasgow. And you can find that by going to anchor.fm/Woku. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Have a great day.